Good morning, everyone. This is the Vermont House Committee on Commerce and Economic Development. It is Friday, February 20th, 2026 at 9:04 in the morning. We're using our Friday half hour before the floor to hear from our legislative interns, Bailey and Cabot. One's from Norwich, one's from UVM. Cabot, did you want to go first?
Yeah.
All right.
Morning, for the record, Cabot Sales, intern from UVM. I will be reporting on some hearings that I was watching from Senate Economic Development, Housing General, and Senate Education. So starting on Tuesday, Senate Economic Development, Housing and General discussed S 328, Act relating to housing and common interest communities, specifically adding a 20% density bonus to construction projects that use union labor. And also on Tuesday, Senate Education was discussing CTE. They got a report regarding data on CTE from the Secretary of the Agency of Education. And there is information, broad overview of the data that they provided in my report. And also online, there is a link to the AOE's report, and I'm also happy to discuss or go over any specific CTE data that they discuss now, if you have any questions about that. They also heard from the Department of Labor related to CTE. Yeah, if you have any questions about that, ask at any time. Wednesday, they moving back to Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs, they heard from the Small Business Development Center and Common Good Vermont about resources available to businesses and nonprofits. And I heard their asks there. And Thursday, Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs discussed S 173, which is an act relating to workers' compensation. And that discussion was about removing the screening process for vocational rehabilitation services. They are favorable of that right now, but there was a specific question that came up that they said maybe the House could think about this, which is, will removing the screening process actually save money in the system by providing people the services they need to get back into the workforce sooner, or will that lead to people getting unnecessary vocational rehab services? So that was kind of left in the air. They also discussed S 230, which is an act relating to flexible working arrangements. And they specifically added teachers to the Family and Medical Leave Act. They're repealing a provision allowing for mandatory retirement for tenured faculty, and they're aligning the definition of crime victim to other statutes there. So it was their discussion on that. And that's all I have for this morning. Any questions?
Good. Thank you, Cabot. Bailey, good morning.
Good morning. My name is Bailey Davis. I'm the Norwich intern for the committee. So my task this week was to look into some recommendations made by the Vermont Association of Career and Technical Directors. So that's the CTE director organization here in Vermont, and they had some recommendations for policy revisions. And so basically what I did is I looked into what states have implemented some of those, at least in some part, as well as if Vermont currently does any of those. So the first thing that they recommended was credit recognition. So basically, if CT students have credit from their CT instruction, whether or not that credit can be recognized through other schools, states like Massachusetts has something called Chapter 74. And that means that approved CTE programs can grant them statewide recognition and academic credit. But with that being said, the districts, because of that act, must like mandatorily honor approved coursework towards graduation credit. Connecticut has done the same. Their CTE centers award academic credit as well. Same thing with New Hampshire. They have state approved CTE competencies that count towards graduation credit. And then Pennsylvania is another example. But Vermont does allow this. However, it's not it's not consistently followed. Generally speaking, it's generally just at the discretion of the receiving district to honor that credit or not. So that means that it's not really consistent. So some places may take that credit, some places may not. The second thing they recommended was the modernization of CTE rules and regulations. So Massachusetts, like I said before, with Chapter 74, they're periodically revised through input by a CTE director. Texas has their State Board of Education, who regularly updates CTE. Indiana structures their CTE in a framework that allows for them to frequently update funding and regulation and whatnot. And then another example I have here is Tennessee. They completely modernized their CTE rules in compliance with what I talked about last week, Perkins 5, which was the federal bill that mandated a lot of the modernization and certain standards be met. So as of now, Vermont doesn't have or hasn't gone over a complete overhaul in at least a few decades. Updates mainly occur kind of piecemeal, so they don't happen all at once. Instead, they happen. There's a certain section that's looked into. So I know, like for example, if you were to look into kind of like what I was doing, right, looking into particularly educators or particularly like I don't know, maybe the credit requirements or the academic requirements for students. It's kind of been done in that way, where it's like you look into little issues rather than updating the whole system. The third thing they recommended was defining program quality. And that's without mandating like a uniform, I guess a uniform way of providing CTE education. So Maine permits the regional centers like we have here in Vermont, but also satellites, and then also like varied academic integration. So they could have maybe CTE education happening at just your local, well, I guess maybe not local, but state universities and whatnot. So public institutions. New York does the same. They allow like the regional flexibility. So those regional CTE centers while also mandating standards directed from the state. Like I said before, Vermont does allow informally that sort of regional center. So like you'll have the full day centers, regional satellites, and then embedded academics. So like I said, we have the Vermont Technical College over in Randolph. So they do some of that integrated CT with them. And then I think a few weeks ago put down all the centers we have here in Vermont. So that's kind of like that regional aspect. The only issue with Vermont is that there's no statute that clearly mandates certain standards, certain quality standards, while allowing some of those like different regional places to do what they're specialized in. So the Vermont doesn't really have something that comes from the state that says this is what you must do. In particular, like as does Maine, but they do allow for the flexibility for those CT centers to specialize in their own fields. So like I said a few weeks ago, Burlington, for example, like more a bit up and coming aerospace industry, technology industry. But then if you go somewhere else, maybe you're looking more at like the traditional technical education sense, maybe carpentry or like going to being an electrician or something like that. The fourth aspect that they recommended changing was the funding. So Massachusetts is one of the examples I have here. Their foundation budget includes CTE weight. So funding is formula driven. If you want, I can look into more of that formula. I don't have it here, but I think that would be interesting. New Hampshire provides the CTE education aid through some formulas similar to Massachusetts. Here in Vermont, though, funding relies on tuition billing between districts. So if a student from one district wants to go to another, typically that funding has to come from the district that the student left and the student originally came from. And then the fifth thing was pre-enforcement intervention pathway. So Massachusetts through Chapter 74 requires department oversight, which includes structured review and escalation for compliance. Connecticut has a centralized CT system that allows for early intervention before formal enforcement. So this is just obviously enforcement to say if one of those centers or one of those, anyone who's providing CT education is actually in compliance with state statute. Vermont, like I said, does have obviously has some statutes and rules, but there's no, I guess, early intervention to actually enforce those rules. It's there's just nothing in place here, as a state like Massachusetts would have, or Connecticut, or New Hampshire. So, and yeah, so I mean, if there's any questions, I'm going to open up the questions now. If there's any questions.
So Bailey, this is great stuff. Very, very appreciated. So the information, I'm just trying, I'm trying to struggle where files are put and stuff like that.
Mhm.
It sounds like you've inputted this to a document. Did that get folded into last week's doc? Is the information in last week's document updated, or is there some other document? Should be.
I can get you the update document. I wasn't able to upload this before the 5 o'clock deadline just because last night, because I was looking into it last night. So
Yeah, that's great. Weekends.
but of course, yeah, I'd be more than happy to get this to you, of course.
So thank you very much.
That'd be great, Bailey. I think this is something we want to pass on to our ledge council as well. When we're starting, we'll give her the opportunity to take a look at some of the research that you've done.
Certainly.
When we start talking.
Certainly. Yeah. And I mean, obviously, some of those more niche things, obviously I want to look into like a lot of funding too, because that's a huge rabbit hole. And really it's hard to do it justice in 10 minutes. So I feel like I'm kind of skipping over stuff, but it's obviously something that, kind of makes or breaks some of this stuff. So
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
So
Thank you.
Bailey, just so you know, our joint fiscal office is currently contracting with an outside group to help us come up with how that funding should work going forward. So, as you get information, we would be, we would like to share it with them as well so that they, I'm assuming they're gonna, they're being paid full time to do this, not as a side project. But if you're collecting information that they don't have access to, or I think that's going to be helpful. But when your number one, which is the graduation requirements, all of the states you said, the other states that you mentioned have clearly delineated which graduation requirements tech centers have oversight over. Is that what I was supposed to be saying?
Yeah, obviously I can give you more specifics. I know for Massachusetts that that Chapter 74 is kind of a big ticket item when it comes to this. And so part of that required that CT programs grant statewide recognition for that credit. So if in my assumption is obviously what that means is if you're doing a program at a CT school, right, that can then be transferred for credit into like any other statewide institution, as opposed to here where, from what I've done, from my research of, I guess my assumption from my research is that here in Vermont, it seems like that's highly dependent on the actual accepting institution. So it's kind of here, hit or miss sort of. It's you may get that credit recognized or you may not.
Yeah, you're exactly right. That's how it works here. The sending school gets to choose how the tech credit is used or not used. And it's a time issue, right? It's a time issue for all of the institutions. You have multiple sending schools into one tech school, so it's much more complicated that way. So yeah.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Of course.
Questions? Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Bailey. Any information from committees you're following, Michael?
588, I looked at that. I don't think it really applies to us.
Yeah, what is it?
That's the Office of Professional Regulation. It's talking about, licensing and the consumer protection, I guess, kind of, but I don't know. I don't really think it does. That doesn't really help in my report,
Is
but
it just, are they looking at the fees or the license fees?
no, we're looking at,
They're looking at,
they actually have a nice document online. I can pull it up if you want to go around to somebody else.
others?
I got nothing in energy. I mean, a lot of it is around, metering and stuff that really has something to do with commerce.
Ag and food resilience and corrections and institutions are seeing many of the same people we are on FY27 budget requests. They also are getting hit by, say, the fair associations and some of the other groups which have a significant, at least local budget, economic impact. And I noted that Ag Committee has a bill that looks at fair labor standards and workforce housing standards, which may have some implications clearly for workforce. I don't know to what extent they go into that, but that is something it's on their radar and they're working on.
So in healthcare, it's a little fluid. I'm actually just got their budget document, and it's still a little unclear what they're including in terms of scholarship and loan for various providers and stuff. They did restore one area, but I think there were a few other components, and I'm still trying to sort that out. In terms of workforce, I think that's what they're doing a whole lot of budget stuff, but
Okay.
in terms of our
Say they're looking at, they got 3 AI bills.
4, yeah.
They're looking at.
And depending on which ones they take up, there's ones that I would say like expand the scope beyond healthcare. So, yeah. Nothing in judiciary. That's other core step, but
Everybody, sorry, I can't get my camera to work. Transportation is still going over the budget. They had maintenance in to go over the RIF and to try to get a better understanding of how the slowdowns in maintenance are going to affect things. So yes, hang on just a second. I'm so sorry. There's a cop that's pulled me over. Okay.
oh,
Oh, no.
I'm pulled over on the side of the road, but the cop is I think checking in.
Okay.
Okay. I will. I'll talk to y'all later.
Okay.
That's good, because if
They're
she's
checking.
pulled over, they're checking on her.
yeah.
So the OPR, I think, so especially in enabling office professionals to rescind licenses due to errors and non-payments. There's the one thing is like enable OPR to enforce against attempted fraudulent or deceptive procedure or use of a license. But again, I just don't know if that really requires us to take a peek. So,
If there's nothing that's changing. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't-
someone's licensing requirements, sometimes we weighed in, like on nurse preceptors. There was a big issue with that where you couldn't really hospitals really couldn't utilize nurses that have worked in the hospitals for a long time because there are specific qualifications that they needed to have, like they needed a master's, and they didn't take into consideration someone's longevity of work, and we weighed in and pushed them to make some changes so that it would allow for nurses to become preceptors in the hospital, where it's the way it used to be, like 40, 50 years ago.
So they have a very detailed purpose of what the bill does. I'm just gonna forward it to you.
I just read.
Oh, okay. Am I right? It's not really,
Yeah, I mean, it adds a dental teacher. So it adds a profession where you don't have to pay, but you can actually teach dentistry, which is something that we need in Vermont. It's gonna allow. And then, yeah, there are a couple of other things there, but you're right. There's nothing that we need to weigh in on.
okay.
But they're also looking at foreign licensure and how to, make it easier for folks who are licensed outside of the US to keep their license in this.
Maybe that could be part of our sister state now.
No, but I mean, it could be part of keeping our workforce.
Yeah.
Right, larger, which is.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
In that workforce motif, is they doing anything specifically with expanding the range of activities that optometrists can do as opposed to an ophthalmologist? Or with CPAs, which is the other one that I'm particular with.
So the extent of my knowledge would be the document on there, which just gives
That's
a,
good.
I apologize. I don't know if they did.
I didn't see the CPA piece, but you're right. We need to check in because I was told that was gonna be in there. Let me double check that.
That's a good question.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, the CPA piece about going to 4 years versus 5, that would be good.
Do you see it, Michael? Can you
Um,
search on CPA?
Yep, so so that the out-of-state accountant does not need to obtain a state license if they both are licensed in any state, passed a uniform CPA examination, and have a permitted combination of education and experience.
So it doesn't reduce the hours necessarily.
It would
Well-
it would just accept another state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will look into that document, but for optometrists, I know, for example, my optometrist is looking to retire and he can't find anybody to take over his practice because they can't do things they're being taught to do. And Vermont prohibits them from doing it under the current licensure
Oh, yeah, that's
regulations.
blocked in the center.
So Cabot, Bailey, thank you both for your work this week. We appreciate it. We'll see you next week. And we're due on the floor now, and we're back here 10 minutes after the floor. We have some students coming in to chat with us.